Let's connect with Kunal Bothra then and go across to find out which interesting topic he got for our viewers today in the Buy Now Sell Now Pathshala. Take it away, Kunal.
Thank you so much for that, Srishti. So it's a topic which I think many short-term traders, they generally look out for, especially in a market which becomes a bit more volatile all of a sudden, or in stock prices when it becomes a bit more volatile. But today's session is specifically towards the upward gaps and how to identify gaps. So I've taken two examples of charts, and I've specifically kept Nifty to be discussed into detail. So the first charts which we'll be discussing would be on Bank of for Bajaj Auto. Now gaps generally have a tendency of acting as strong resistances or strong supports for stock prices. So this was the chart for Bajaj Auto over the last 2-3 months when the stock moved up from 4,500-550 mark towards a point when the stock was almost at 5,200 levels. Now, interestingly, that in this entire rally, there was this very strong gap which was created for the stock price. Now, this gap, which is around 4,850 to 4,900 odd mark, that gap acts as a major support for the stock price in case if the stock gets into a mean reversion. Now, in the last 1 month, the stock went up higher to 5,300, then corrected back, and as you can see that it's taken support at this gap level. Now, the stock could be on course of starting off a fresh trend and hopefully breaking past about the previous highs of 5,300 out for Bajaj Auto. So that's the importance of gap, that whenever you see a gap, it generally acts as a major resistance or a support. Now I've taken the Nifty charts to be more discussed into detail. Again, a very similar kind of a chart for the Nifty from the June-July points when the Nifty formed the the third major gap. Now third gaps generally are called as very important gaps because they determine that the index or an asset class moves into a higher range. So this was the classical case over here for the Nifty. As you can see, two gaps earlier which was seen for the Nifty, and the third gap becomes all the more crucial. So if the third gap remains to be unfilled, then we said that the index still remains to be into a strong trend. And from the June highs, the July top, the correction till August, the recent top in the month of September, and even the correction, we've not yet filled the gap for the index. That itself indicates that we are already into a very strong and a fierce uptrend for the indices. Now what matters is the short-term charts. Now this is the very recent chart, so I've tried to extrapolate this interesting aspect of this short-term charts and looked at the third slide, which is that what happens when the gap on the downside and how the gap acts as a resistance. So as you can see, the first gap which was created around 20,000, 20,100 mark, this was the second gap, and this is a third gap. Now interestingly, day before yesterday's candlestick pattern, when the Nifty formed 19,300 mark, there was two gaps which were created, a down gap, a bullish pattern, and then an upward gap. Now this is a classical pattern, which in fact I'll discuss it in the next Pathshala session. But this is a very important gap, very rare patterns which happens on the indices, but this holds a lot of prominence. It's actually called as a fulcrum point for the index because trends and supports, they change at these kind of patterns, which we'll be discussing in the next session.
All right, so just to get the headline as to which is the topic that you're going to discuss next Pathshala session, because Abhishek, our producer, is definitely taking note of that, Kunal, and also most importantly, since it's World Cup season, I'm hoping that you're going to be there next Friday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or it's just a teaser, picture abhi baki hai, isn't it?
Absolutely. Once committed, I'll always deliver.
All right. I'm not going to translate that in Hindi. Isn't that Salman's dialogue?
I don't think so. I think it's original.
Oh, it's original. All right. Then on the original note, then we'll slip into a break on this edition of Buy Now Sell Now when we